What's up, guys? My name is John Hawes, RNCCRN with NRSNG.com, where our goal is to give you the tools and the confidence that you need to succeed in nursing school, on the NCLEX, and in your life as a nurse. To help you succeed on this journey, we've created weekly cheat sheets that we send to you every single Friday. To sign up, head over to NRSNG.com/freebies. That's NRSNG.com/freebies. And every single Friday, we'll send you a cheat sheet on pediatrics, OB, med-surg, mental health, ICU, critical care, every single aspect of nursing care to help you succeed. That's NRSNG.com/freebies. All right, now let's roll into the show.
All right, welcome to this episode of the NRSNG podcast. My name is Katie Cleaver. I'm a registered nurse. Worked a few years in a cardiac step-down unit and about 4 years in a neuro ICU. Today, let's chat a little bit about med errors. Nurses give meds constantly all the time. It is inevitable that we're going to have an error, and I think it's important that us as nurses, the more we are aware of the fact that this does and can happen, I think the more we can prevent it. I think people think that nurses, once you graduate nursing school, only the terrible nurses ever make errors, and that's could not be farther from the truth. Wonderful nurses screw up. We're humans, and I think it's inevitable that we all screw up at some point, but what's important is how we handle them. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about a med error that I had, and then how I handled it, and how I think if you have a med error, kind of the way to approach dealing with it. So I had a patient that had surgery, and post-operatively in the PACU received 1 gram of IV Tylenol. So for those of you that don't know, Tylenol, in 24 hours, the max you can get is 4 grams. Otherwise, you can start having issues with liver failure because it's very hard on your liver. People have died from Tylenol toxicity. So it's something that a lot of hospitals watch very, very, very closely and have a lot of safeguards on. Actually, talking to a pharmacist before this happened, but that they really wished that they could not supply Tylenol at all in a hospital, because the limit of it is lower than a lot of other medications, and it's just a nightmare to monitor and keep track of. But it does provide very effective pain relief. So this pharmacist fully recognized that physicians probably would never let that happen. But from the pharmacy standpoint, it's just something they wished could occur. But my patient received 1 gram of IV Tylenol in the PACU. And I got report from the PACU nurse. Usually they let me know what they got medication-wise in the PACU. The nurse didn't let me know that they got this IV Tylenol, and I didn't think to ask. There are patients that go through various surgeries and routinely get IV Tylenol afterwards because it's so effective for pain relief, and it's not a narcotic. So it's wonderful because you don't have that respiratory depression and those additional risks that come with narcotics. But the patients that I typically get after surgery, they don't get IV Tylenol, so I didn't think to ask. And when I was getting report, I did not have the chart open in front of me, so I didn't scroll through to see what medications they gave, and the nurse had told me what meds she gave, so I didn't even think to, walk across the unit, pull up a computer, look at the chart to double check the medications this nurse said they gave. Patient did fine. Surgery went fine. Minimal pain afterwards. Everything's fine. Patient got admitted just great. I couldn't have asked for anything to go better. And then about 5 or 6 hours later, she says, I'm having a little mild headache. Can I have a little pain medicine? I said, of course. And I looked at her PRN meds, and she had Tylenol ordered, and then she also had Norco and Percocet. And Norco is a medication that has both hydrocodone and Tylenol combined into it. Percocet has Tylenol and oxycodone combined into it. So and it's kind of like Tylenol's the least the least amount. Then you add then the Norco is kind of like the middle ground, and the Percocet would be for the worst pain. And I think she rated her pain on like a 5 or a 6. So it was enough to justify the Norco, and enough where I thought this just Tylenol is probably not going to cut it. So I went ahead and I gave her, she could have 1 or 2 tabs of this Norco, and I gave her 1. This was 6 hours after her surgery. And everything was fine. Didn't think, like, nothing happened. Like, literally nothing happened. I clock out, like, life was fine. And then a few days later, my manager calls me into my office and says, so your patient, this person, received IV Tylenol in the PACU. Did you know that? No, I didn't know that. Like, I honestly didn't. I didn't, when the patient got there, you know, everything was, I didn't think to look at the meds that verify the meds that the PACU nurse gave. You know, I had no idea. And then per policy, the patient cannot receive any Tylenol containing product within 8 hours of receiving IV Tylenol. I had given 1 Norco, which had 325 milligrams of acetaminophen in it, 6 hours after that dose. So I gave it to her 2 hours early. And that was a policy violation. I had to, you know, fill out whatever paperwork. And then I also had to give a little talk at our next staff meeting about IV Tylenol and the specifics around that. See, when we started the whole like IV Tylenol, this is, you can't give any Tylenol containing products after 8 hours. You know, I got the in-service, I remembered it and stuff, but when I had the patient, you know, it's like I didn't think to look that they had IV Tylenol, and when I scanned in the medication, you know, I would have thought that if I couldn't give it, it would have given me a, hey, too much Tylenol, or this is too early. And that patient actually, when I looked back at the chart, didn't receive any more Norco. So the patient had only received, within a 24-hour period, 1,325 milligrams of Tylenol, which is well below the hospital limit and well below, substantially below the like recommended limit for 24 hours. But I violated policy, and that was a medication error. And it was one of those things where I definitely learned something. I learned that I need to verify the medications. I also touched base with the PACU, because I worked also on some like committees and stuff, and I ran into the PACU manager, and I was like, hey, is it like normal when they give, because I know IV Tylenol is like this high alert medication. Do you guys do anything specific when you're communicating about it? And she said, yeah, actually we're supposed to hang it on the IV pole, even if it's done, so that when we transfer the patient to another unit, even if that piece of communication was forgotten, hey, we have the patient got it, it's still hanging on the IV pump or IV pole, which that wasn't the case with this patient. So, you know, she reinforced that with her staff. But, you know, I feel like when you screw up, and regardless of if true harm reached the patient or not, it's really sucks. It sucks as a bedside nurse, because you never want to do anything that would potentially hurt your patient, let alone or even violate policy. I think we're so conditioned that we're terrible nurses if we ever do anything against policy. But truly, we're humans and we can make mistakes, but it's how we deal with them. So, you know, you don't want to beat yourself up unnecessarily, right? So this was an error that I made, that I admitted that I made, that I unknowingly made, and there could have been things that I could have done to avoid this. Like I could have verified the meds that the PACU that patient received in PACU, which was the main thing. Like, okay, I got a report that they got a little fentanyl, they got a little, I don't know, morphine or something or whatever. But and they got some LR, but I didn't, you know, I need to make sure that's what they got and when they got it, so that I can safely administer my medications. So that was the main thing that I had learned. And I also really had that Tylenol policy really ingrained in me. And it's one thing when you hear about other people making mistakes, but I think it's different when you do it yourself. So I want to encourage you to make sure if you notice, hey, I made a mistake. Own up to it immediately. I think essential to have immediate accountability. If we try to push blame or push responsibility onto someone else that screwed up, we're missing the point. I think some people's automatic response is to try to have take away my responsibility from the situation, but it is important that we admit and own our own responsibility within the situation so that we can learn from it and grow from it the best that we can. It's really hard to do that if we're pretending like we had no role in it or it was all somebody else's fault. So if something happens, even if accountability maybe someone else does need to also take accountability. We need to make sure that we take accountability for ourselves. Hey, I screwed up. Then go to whomever that you trust that can guide you if you're not sure about the next practical steps to take. Many times when there's a medication error, you stabilize the patient first if that's an issue. You may need to, most likely let the physician know. And then also maybe if the pharmacist needs to know, or you need to ask, hey, I gave this med with this medication in the IV. Is there any concern? Or, letting the physician know, do I need to do additional monitoring? What do you need me to do? A lot of hospitals have incident reporting systems, and it's not to get the nurse in trouble, but sometimes we have commit a meta error because processes are not perfect. And maybe there should be something that no matter when a patient has Tylenol, even if it's in a different phase of care, like in operative care or PACU versus being on the floor, maybe those meds that need to communicate on the chart. So I think it's important to make sure that you go through that appropriate process, not with a mentality that people are just trying to get me in trouble and get me fired, but from maybe there's a process that needs to be changed. And also utilizing that mistake to educate others so that they don't make the same mistake as well. I was annoyed a little bit that I had to stand in front of the staff and talk about how I screwed up, but I think I do at the end of the day think that was beneficial, so that other nurses didn't have to make that same mistake, because it was not like this overt, obvious, gave IV push the wrong medication. It was a missed communication. I didn't verify. I went ahead and gave it. There wasn't a check in the system. There were a couple things where this patient ended up getting Tylenol a couple hours early. So that's what I think is really important when you're given meds. So making sure, number one, if you have an error, recognizing it immediately, taking your own accountability, and hey, I messed up in whatever situation, following the appropriate policy and procedure, which will most likely include contacting the physician for additional orders or monitoring or whatever, or maybe if an antidote is needed or something like that. And also the last step is if other people were involved where they have to know that a mistake occurred, that there needs to be accountability on the other end. As you're going through that chain, making sure you or your manager or whomever follows up with that other person. Most likely it's going to be you because you were in that situation. But that way other people, if they need to know if that something was missed or whatever, so that it gets addressed appropriately. So I hope this helps. You are human. If you make a med error, that's, we're human and it happens. It's just how we learn from it. Don't beat yourself up. Learn from it what you need to, and then move on. And use it as a teaching tool with other nurses you educate, or use it as, with your colleagues so they don't make the same mistake as well. It's kind of like as a parent when you're raising your kids and you screwed something up and you don't want them to make the same mistake, you want to communicate that to others so that they don't go through that as well and they learn too. And I think it's a very effective teaching tool to say, hey, this is what I did. It offers some degree of a vulnerability. And when you tell people how you've screwed up in the past and how you handled it, I think people connect with you and they, appreciate you sharing that with them. So I just want to encourage you to not be as scared of that as a nurse when you're working with your new nurses or you're working with your colleagues, to talk about this stuff, because the nurse that says they never make mistakes, they've never had an error at all, that's a dangerous nurse. That is a dangerous nurse, because if they can't recognize their own mistakes, you don't know where they truly have messed up. So it's important to be able to quickly recognize when we've screwed up, have accountability, and go through the appropriate chains of command to remedy it in that situation, but also to hopefully prevent others from having that same mistake happen as well. So I hope this was helpful to you. I hope when you walk through and your nursing career, and if you run into this situation, give yourself, hold yourself accountable, but give yourself some grace as well, and follow your chain of command as appropriate. So I hope you have a great day, guys, and thank you so much for listening.
All right. I hope that was helpful today, guys. I hope that gave you some motivation, some inspiration to go out and to be your best self, to go out and to become the nurse that you want to be, to make a difference, and to do the best work that you can. Listen, we're here to help you along your way. At NRSNG.com, our goal is to give you tools and competence to help you in nursing school, on the NCLEX, and in life. One of those tools we created is our Friday freebies, these weekly PDF cheat sheets that you can refer to on the clinical floor, in the classroom, and just throughout your entire career as a nurse. To get these cheat sheets, head over to NRSNG.com/freebies. That's NRSNG.com/freebies. You guys, if you need anything, we're here for you. You can reach out to us on social media or via email at contact@nrsng.com. We want you to succeed. We want to help you along the way. We're here to hold your hand. We're here to give you the tools, the confidence that you need to achieve success in this journey to nurse. All right, so you guys know what time it is now. It's time to go out and be your best self today. Happy nursing.